Thanks so much for coming out. I think Paul and I are going to talk for about 10 minutes and then we'll open it up to all of you, so I'm going to jump right into it. Paul, in your collected screenplays, you talk about Taxi Driver, sort of one of the first times we see the man in the room, the journaling man character, and you say Taxi Driver is circular. At the end of the film, Travis Bickle, the taxi driver, Robert De Niro's character, has not been changed, he has only been revealed. But I think as these films have gone on, there's been more change, and I think this is maybe the film with the most change, and I wonder if you could speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's a kind of an arc. This character, who was first born in European literature of the 20th century, starting with The Underground Man. I latched on to him in the 70s, and he hadn't been in films yet, but he was an established figure in literature. And as I've written about him in various permutations, the endings sort of mutate until I was writing this one, which is a kind of post-facto trilogy. It came to be that it was a trilogy as I was writing the third one, and it wasn't so designed. In fact, somebody had to point it out to me. And I was originally sort of thinking of ending it in a Taxi Driver sort of way, where there was a slaughter and the white supremacist had to flee and leave his new home and be thrown from the garden. I just felt that at my age and my going through this character, that was a kind of a tired trope. And then I had a friend, S.G. Goodman, who I met, strangely enough, through Facebook. She's an Appalachian singer. And she had a song, Space and Time, which I loved. And I said, I'd love to use S.G.'s song in this. And I thought, maybe that's where I'm at now. Get Mariba, Devontae Hines, we got Mariba to do an R&B version of the Appalachian song. And they ended with, I don't want to leave this world until I say I love you. And basically, Taxi Driver, I began by saying, I don't want to leave this world until I say, fuck you. So it takes 50 years, but it's still, it's an arc.
All right, so follow-up question. I know that you wrote another screenplay after you had filmed and edited Master Gardener, and that's the one that Elizabeth Moss is working on, and that's the first time you wrote The Man in the...
Well, I said I'd give this character time to write it as a female. I'm not going to write about it anymore as a male. I'm trying to go off to that, and the trilogy is a way to put an exclamation mark at the end of it. So I thought, maybe he's a female trauma nurse in Puerto Rico. I started writing it this way, and it ended up being a script about female sexual irresponsibility. Women who basically get men in trouble, and then flee, and then meet new men, and then get them in trouble too. And I wrote it. It was a good script, but I said, I'm in the wrong part of town. This is all about this young, irresponsible, oversexed female, and I'm a 77-year-old white male. I said, I don't think I should be doing this, particularly now that there are so many qualified female directors out there. So I decided to just, and I subsequently optioned it to Elizabeth Moss to star and direct. And then I wrote another script, which is what I'm doing next, and now I'm writing one after that.
Well, before we skip forward to the next script, just to stay on the man in the room for a while, then it sounds like we're not gonna see the man in the room for a while and the sort of, or ever again, and then the follow-up question is, this is a character that's kept you company for 5 decades now. Are you gonna miss that character?
I don't think so. I think he's just about exhausted him. You know, I made a joke once to, said, you know, fine, I said, when I was younger, I said, you know, I'll always be writing about this character, and eventually he'll be 80 years old, he'll be running an elevator, and he'll say, I take him up, I take him down. But I don't think I'll write the elevator man.
So let me ask a gossipy question then, and then I'll have, I think, 1 or 2 more after this, and I'll open it up. You worked with, your next film, you're working with Richard Gere in the film you're filming this summer. And you worked with Richard Gere in '79, I believe?
Yes, sir.
American Gigolo. So what has your relationship been like in the intervening years, and what is your relationship like now?
Not so much intervening years. He went his way, I went mine. He was more interested in the kind of bigger films than I was. He circled back around and started doing some of the smaller films again. And I had a very close friend, Russell Banks, who wrote a book called Affliction, and I wish I adapted. And Russell died in January of cancer. And about 6 years ago, he had written a book called Ford Go On, which was his Ivan Illich, which is about the depredations and the degradations of dying. And I said, you know, at the same time I was saying I shouldn't be doing a film about this Puerto Rican nurse, I should be doing a film about Russell dying. And even though he wasn't dying when he wrote the book, but he ended up being the character he wrote about. Died pretty much the same way the character he wrote about did die. And so that movie was, the book was called Ford Gone. He wanted to call it Oh Canada, but Richard Ford was coming out with a book called Canada. So I'm calling it Oh Canada. And it's about a dying documentary filmmaker. And so then I started thinking, you know, who is, you know, would be a good person in their late 70s. And I approached De Niro, who's working, you know, for the next 2 years straight. And then I thought, well, maybe Richard, maybe I'll go back to Richard. And so I did.
Is there such a thing as late style for a filmmaker, and if so, what does that
A
look
what?
like for you? A late style?
Well, technology has allowed me to become a little more streamlined. When the budgets were bigger, when the shooting schedule was longer, I was very afraid of doing something esoteric or ascetic, because I figured it could be a career crusher. It had to have some fun, a pulpy action, it had some flair, some flamboyance, and had a feed into commercial genres. But then starting, after I had a bad situation where I got taken off of film in post, I said, I've got to get Final Cut. And I was able to get Final Cut, and then I could do anything I wanted, because the films I was shooting in 44 days were now shooting in 21 days. Shooting just as much quote unquote footage. Just everything's faster, cheaper. And I said, you know, I can make some of those films now that I was afraid to make when I was younger. 1, because I thought they would be too expensive. 2, because I thought they would fail. And, you know, And the third reason, which I just forgot. And so then I started with First Reformed, and now I can, in all honesty and good Christian stewardship, say to people, I'm not gonna make you rich, but I think I can get your money back. All I owe them. Before, I used to say that I was lying, but now I'm saying that I'm telling the
truth. Last question before I open it up to you folks. When I spoke to Sigourney Weaver in the course of writing this profile of you, she told me I always play the director. What does that mean in the case of Pastor Carter?
Can you hear me?
No.
I can't. I'm not saying right now.
When I was interviewing Sigourney Weaver in the course of writing this profile, she told me I always play the director, and I was curious what that meant in the case of her performance.
What about
Pastor
Sigourney?
Carter? She said she always plays the director. So what does that mean? In Pastor Carter?
Play the director.
Plays the director. She plays the director. She doesn't play the script. She plays the director. She was looking at you and playing you.
Ah, I hadn't heard that before.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah. Now I understand Jim Cameron. Yeah, I know. Honestly, I don't quite. Obviously, when you have a writer-director, you know that there's a heartbeat in this that may not necessarily be verbalized. And that in some ways, her job as an actor is to interpret that heartbeat in however she can.
Should we open it up to the audience? There are some people with mics. I can't really see with the lights in my eyes. Sorry. Oh, this gentleman right here.
Yes. So I was wondering, does it work? Okay. I don't know. So I was wondering, did you consciously, be more, were you consciously, more Bressonian with this trilogy? And, what movies, do you think Robert Bresson would be making today, these types, or?
Well, I mean, First Reformed is clearly attempt to make a film in the Bressonian style. Less so in First Reformed, less so in this one. First Reformed, the material lends itself to that. What would Bresson be making if he could still make? I don't know. I mean, I remember I wrote to him when I wrote a book about him, and eventually I went to Paris and interviewed him. And then he sent me a letter once. It was a very touching letter. And he was trying to do L'Argent. And he needed money. And I had become a successful screenwriter. He was asking me if I could help get him some money. So that's what he would probably still be writing.
Anyone else? Gentleman on the right here.
Hi, my question is, what is your thought process when you're writing, intimacy scenes? I know they're a very important part of your films. How do you approach that challenge? What are you thinking when you're writing an intimacy scene?
Which aspect of writing were you talking about?
Writing intimacy scenes.
Meaning like sexual material?
Yes.
It's it's like a grenade, you light it and run. Hope the actors, make it come alive for you. It's never really been my forte. I haven't worked in that area much. Cat People was probably the closest thing I ever came to that. And so, I'm not a big director for sweat on the sheets. I'm a colder director than that. And and it shows up not only in the work but in the reviews, and also in this film too. This very odd sex scene, this reverse plantation. You know, what's the cliche from the plantation?
Mandingo.
What?
Mandingo is the
Mandingo.
word you've been using.
Yeah, the reverse Mandingo scene, where the white supremacist plays Mandingo and the kitchen girl plays the mistress of the house. Well, that is a very peculiar scene. And it's really rather cold. And I didn't, it was so peculiar, I didn't know. I thought it would only get worse if the more heated up, the more real it became. Now, that's me. The next director may come along and say, the only way you make that scene work is you have them just go at it. And have the sweats, the sound, fury. And whereas the version I'm doing is very, very cold and go down in and analytical. And that just has to do with different temperaments, different approaches.
Maybe right where you're standing, and then we could go to the second row.
Your film is so visually precise. Could you talk about the genesis of the Abu Ghraib flashback visual techniques in the card counter?
Well, ideally, when you deal with stories like that, starting with Taxi Driver, you prefer not to do flashbacks. You would like the audience to provide that. So Vietnam was never mentioned in Taxi Driver. It's clear that he's been in the service. That's about it. Most of the reviews of that film then, and for the last 50 years, have described him as a Vietnam vet. Now, it's not in the text, but the viewer supplies that information. That's the way it should work. That's the way it works when it's good. You put enough keys out there and enough seeds, and they'll come to fruition in the viewer's mind. And so in First Reform, you don't see him in Afghanistan or Iraq. Well, he tells you a little bit about it. But then I came to Card Counter and I said, you know, this is such a hallucinogenic memory. I think I have to get it inside his mind here. And we all know exactly what Abu Ghraib looked like. There's endless photographs and footage of it. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted a hallucinatory version of it. So we put on a 9mm lens, which literally sees floor, ceiling, walls. Everything's completely wide out. You do a close-up at 9mm, the camera's here, the person's there, and everything's spread out. And so I used that in one contiguous set that we built, and just to get into the kind of madness that he was using the casino life to suppress. And then in this one, I did think we had to see a little bit of his past. I never did a cut where I cut out all the flashbacks altogether. Maybe I should have. It might have been interesting. I just thought of this the other day when someone asked a very similar question. You know, I never sat there in the editor room and said, let's take out all the flashbacks. It might have been different if I had tried that. On the other hand, you know, it is useful to see Joel in that prior in iteration of his life. But I did not do the scenes that you expect me to do, which is the conversion. You know, when Paul is hit by the light on the road to Damascus, and the white supremacist changes his life and rats out his friends. That I left to your imagination as a viewer.
I believe you had a question.
I love the film. I don't know whether, can anybody hear me, or shall I speak up, or what should I do? Can you hear me? Yes. Coming after First Reform, I hardly dare to make a presumption, but I think I'm seeing something on the screen, which was that in First Reform, you were largely in an almost square format. Maybe it was the Hasselblad format, and the frame was stationary, and the action moved in and out of the frame, and I just loved it. And I didn't know at what moment you would decide to do something like that.
Yeah, you're a very astute viewer, because it is in 133, the old classical pre-modern era sound. And when you do sparse cinema, there's certain things you don't do. You don't move the camera, you don't have dramatic shifts in lighting. You have what they call clinometric composition, which means that everything is on the same focal plane. You center punch, you don't use music. All these are methods of withholding. You keep withholding stuff from viewers who expect to be spoon-fed everything. You don't have to feel a thing when you see a movie. You know, you're scared, we'll tell you when you're scared, we'll tell you when you're happy, we'll tell you everything you wanna know. In fact, you don't even have to stay awake. But when you start withholding things from viewers, then you start playing that little game of how much can I withhold before they leave the theater. I've been using this example when I first saw it in Pickpocket by Persona. Normally on film, a man exits a room, closes the door. The splice occurs just before the latch connects. That's a good cut. Persona and Pickpocket was letting the door close and waiting 2 beats. Boom, close, 1, 2, then cut. Now what is happening? Nothing. Nothing's happening, you're just looking at a door. But here's what's happening, time is happening. And he is fucking with your sense of time in movies. And he's telling you, we're not gonna go at the pace you want us to. And out of that, he starts to create another mood, another sense. Now, he was doing it for about 2 to 3 seconds. What happens if you do it for 5 seconds? What happens if you do it for 10 seconds? You know, what happens if you do a Bellatar and just hold on the door for 10 seconds? Time happens. What do people think about during that time? Well, they start to create, because we can't bear to be bored. So we'll start making a movie ourselves. Well, that's what we're trying to get you to do. A writer, a singer, a playwright. We're trying to get you to help you make your own movie, because that's the only movie that matters to you, is the one that I can get you to make. And so in First Reform, I was using all of these classic withholding devices. Less so, and this one, you know, I started thinking about the garden. I decided to do it widescreen because the garden is such a horizontal ratio, and again, First Reformed, there are no overs. Now, overs are part of the common film language, but before the 40s, they didn't have overs because they had a square format. You didn't need an over. Cut to him, cut to her, 2 shot. All of a sudden, they started going into a more horizontal format. Then you had him here, and then you had a hole right there. Well, where do we put in the hole? We put somebody's shoulder in the hole. Or put the edge of somebody's face in the hole. Now you have foreground, background, out of focus, in focus. That's a judgment in a way, because obviously the thing that's in focus is more important than the thing that's out of focus. So you're automatically putting a judgment in. So when Quentin Tarantino in Pulp Fiction shows a shot in the coffee shop, with Ving Rhames, and the back of his neck with a bandage on it is in focus, and the person he's talking to isn't in focus. You know, and, you know, that's just really an example of how much we guide you to see what is important. And so, so this one, it's kind of quasi-sparse. It's quite lean, but it does participate in the movement inherent to walking in a garden.
But it also moves it horizontally. It's always, whatever the action is inside the frame, is always, it may be coming toward you, it may be going away, it may be going out, but it's constantly moving within the frame. It's wonderful.
Well, not as much as you think, you know, all those writing scenes and all those kind of static scenes. I mean, I did a film years ago called Comfort of Strangers, where everything was always moving. And today, in particular, there are films that just never stop at any level. In terms of camera movement, editing, acting, it's all redlining. And so this is not as sparse as First Reformed.
I think we have time for one final question. Maybe we'll move it back to the back of the room. The person on the aisle, I can't quite see.
Hi, thank you very much. I was just wondering, during the writing and directing process, how you navigated the symbols of hate historically and the ones that we have currently. I really noticed how sparse it was in terms of the current language that we use in terms of hate and how groups of those types of people would be using it.
Or I'm sorry, symbols of hate, did you say?
Yeah, specifically how sparse they were and how a lot of the current language that you may hear.
I mean, I don't know what symbols of hate are.
Well, the swastika, and I only honestly heard the term Proud Boys used, and I was just really wondering, as you wrote and directed, how you were sort of kept it timely and timeless.
Well, I kind of backed into that, because originally I had this idea of a witness protection guy. He was a mafia hitman, and he ends up being a gardener. Well, the first idea was the metaphor of the garden, probably the oldest metaphor in literature. You know, we would still be there. Hadn't listened to that snake. And so I had the garden. It's a very complex metaphor. It can be cruel, it can be kind. It's a great metaphor. And so I thought, well, we'll have a guy who was a gardener, who's in witness protection. He used to be a killer, and now he's a gardener. And, then get him in a situation with two polar females. One old enough to be his mother, the other young enough to be his daughter. Then I'll have this double matrix, May, December, May going on. And that's kind of controversial. May, December is now politically incorrect. It used to be the norm in movies. And when I'm trying to finance the thing, some people said to me, does she have to be so young? Does she literally have to be his daughter's age? Because you have this kind of perverse fantasy going on, which is he gets his daughter back and he gets to sleep with her too. And I kind of like that May, December thing. I didn't want to change it. So then I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll throw another thorn on the vine to distract people. I said, instead of a mafia hitman, let's make him a white supremacist Proud Boy who we're going to redeem. I said, people are going to get so upset by that that they're going to forget about the May, December problem. And then, further along, I'm now casting, and people are saying about the May, December, and the whole, validate the white supremacist, because it's a kind of a fable. I mean, people really don't change much. There are a couple examples of people who have changed like this, but this is a what-if story. It's not this is the way it is. is the, what if it was this way? And so you know, you're now dealing with the fact that you're offending, two groups as it is, and then of course you've got another group in waiting, which is the blacks who find this to be a white savior kind of cliche. And so, you know, you're racking up the hot buttons on constantly. And, I said, okay, now if we really wanna have fun, let's cast Kevin Spacey. The interviewers are gonna be so fucked, their heads are gonna be spinning so fast, they won't know what they dislike about the film most. But, I didn't.
Thank you all. Thank you.